opening comments. I hope he's able to make them even more strongly in his closing remarks.
I think Lord Allen of Hallam hinted at this, which is that there has been a plethora of government amendments at report stage. To be honest, it's been quite hard to fully digest most of them, let alone scrutinise them, although I do appreciate that the vast majority seem to have been drawn up with opposition lords, so they might have found it a bit easier. But anyway, some have snuck in. And in this context, I do want to raise some problems with amendments in this group that I think are important. And I too am especially worried about that government amendment on facilitating remote access to services and equipment used by services. And I'm really grateful, therefore, to the noble Lords Allen of Hallam and Clement Jones for tabling their amendment 247B, because I didn't know what to do, and you did it. So at least it kind of raises it to the level of it needing to be taken seriously. I think that the biggest problem I had when I kind of originally read this was in terms of facilitating remote access to services and as yet undefined equipment used by a service. That does seem like a very big decision and potentially disproportionate, certainly has the potential to have regulatory overreach. And I think it does create real risks around privacy that need to be discussed. And it just feels as though it hasn't even been flagged up strongly enough by the government in terms of what it could mean. So I really would ask, as I tried to listen to what the Minister said, and I still don't fully understand why this is necessary. And I want to ask the government, has it considered the privacy and security implications that have already been discussed? I mean, already the government, through amendment, I think it's 25A, is it? I can't remember. Anyway, has the power now to enter premises for inspection, which I have to say rather did feel like the potential for raids. But anyway, that's to one side. You can go in, you can order an audit and so on. But remote access as a preliminary way of information gathering option seems heavy-handed. Why not leave it to be the late stage, the very last thing that you would do in a dialogue between Ofcom and a given platform? So I just feel as though we have yet to have a proper justification as to why Ofcom would need to do this as a kind of first-order thing to do. The bill doesn't actually define exactly what equipment used by the service actually means either, because I think that I want to know whether it extends to employees' laptops and phones. Has the government assessed the practicalities and the security impact? If it extends to external data centres, and as has been explained, substantial security implications both for the services, data centre providers and those of us whose data they hold. I'm also concerned that this will necessitate that companies will now have to consider very strongly privacy and security controls within their companies in order to have to deal with the possibility of this, and that will place a disproportionate burden on smaller and mid-sized businesses which don't have the resources available to the biggest technology companies. And I do keep raising this because in other parts of government there's a constant attempt at saying that the UK is going to be the centre of technological innovation and that we're going to be a powerhouse in new technologies. And yet I'm concerned that so much of this bill could in fact damage that innovation, and I think that's worth considering. I also wanted to refer back to, I can now see that it's Amendment 252A, which is the power to observe at the premises. And I wondered if I could just ask about this, because it seemed to me that it ignored decentralised projects and services, the very kind of services that I think can revolutionise social media in a very positive way, and that indicates that not every service is like Facebook. But it seems that even that amendment kind of misses that point, because if you take, for example, the UK-based Matrix, which is the provider of encrypted chat services, chat service element, which allows users to host their own servers, you know, they aren't going to be able, you're not going to be able to walk in into the premises. Or if you look at non-profit Mastodon, It claims to be the largest decentralised social network in the internet, and it's built on open web standards, just precisely because it doesn't want to be bought or owned by a billionaire. And yet so many of these amendments seem to not take into account those kind of issues. I wanted to also raise a slight concern I have with this access to research, access to data as well. This is, when we discussed it at committee, was very much posed as, you know, and in fact the tone of the amendments now is very much the idea that these special researchers need to be able to find out what's going on in these bad tech companies who are trying to hide away dangerous information from us. And I think that it just gets to the point where I just feel as though, although we are trying to ensure that there's a protection from harms, we don't want to demonise the companies so much that we assume that every time they raise privacy issues or say, we will provide data but you can't either access it remotely, or we want to be the ones deciding what researchers are allowed to look at our data, that we don't assume that they are up to no good all the time. I think that actually sets a very wrong message if we're going to be a tech innovative company, or indeed if there's going to be any working together. And then my final point is actually to be a bit more positive. I'm very keen that the points made by the Minister in terms of the importance of transparency and algorithms, particularly as in Amendments 196 and 199. I think this does raise an important point. I think that these amendments, which want providers of user-to-user services and providers of search services to have to include in their transparency report details about algorithms so that we can see how they work, and these amendments particularly relate to illegal content and content that is harmful to children. I'd actually like to see that being understood more broadly, because I think there's a constant tension here for me where people don't know what the algorithms are doing when content is either removed or deboosted or whatever. They don't know why, and I think that having more transparency there would be a positive thing. The Minister knows this because I've written to him on the subject, but for example, many women are regularly being banned from social media for speaking out on on sex-based rights, and gender-critical accounts are constantly telling me and discussing amongst ourselves that they've been shadow banned, that the algorithms are not allowing them to get their points over. And this is alleged because of the legacy of trans activists controlling the algorithms. Now, following on from Lord Allen of Hallam, there's always a danger here of people being conspiratorial, people being paranoid, people thinking the algorithms are, you know, I've made the point in an earlier discussion that sometimes it might be that you just put up a boring post, nobody is interested in it, but you imagine someone behind the scenes. But we do know that Facebook continues to delete posts that state men cannot be women, for example. My point is, I would like this to be demystified. So actually, I think that the more that Ofcom can ask the companies to demystify their algorithmic decisions, and the more users can be empowered to know about it, the better for all of us. And that's the positive bit of these amendments that I do like.
The business of the internet is data. And